I think the push-up is the best pressing exercise out there. So the best exercise for targeting your chest, your triceps, and your shoulders. And in the case of the push-up, also your core. And the reason for this is because it works all of those muscles, pretty adequately, especially the triceps, chest, and core. The push-up is really a plank in motion, you could say. So you have to retain a tight core throughout the entire movement if you want to do the exercise with proper form. You can also do the push-up anywhere. It's one of, along with the squat probably, the most accessible exercises in the world. Even prisoners who get taken all their freedom away are still able to do push-ups in their cell. So you can do them anywhere. They're very beginner friendly as well. You can start out on your knees, then work yourself up to doing them on your toes. And then it's also very easy to add weight to the exercise. A lot of people think it's difficult, but no. And you don't have to add weight, but you can add weight by buying a weight vest like I have, or you can simply just increase the range of motion. So you can do, you can buy parallettes and in that way get a better stretch in your chest. And that's actually something I recommend to people with a tight chest. So you can stretch and contract in the same motion. They're also very safe. I've never ever met anyone who got injured from doing regular push-ups. Yeah, maybe. If you go super deep with, 100 kilos on your back, you're in trouble with your shoulders maybe. But that's extremely rare and no one does that. So the push-up is an extremely safe exercise as well. There are also some negatives with the push-up, of course. Like you can strain your wrists. That's something I have. I have wrist problems on my right hand because I've done so many push-ups, I think. But you can pretty easily get rid of that by, like I do, doing push-ups on like a wood block, which is what I have, or something you can hold on to, right? Some also see them as too basic, and I think that's why the push-up is never included or rarely included in like the best pressing exercises. People just look over the push-up because it's such a basic, beginner-friendly exercise. But in reality, it is probably the best, at least in my opinion, pressing exercise, hence why I do it. And it's not only beginner friendly, you can do it forever by adding weight and making it harder over time, right? All right, so typical contenders for the top spot when it comes to pressing exercises would probably be all the gym presses, which are just clump into one. So that's the machine presses, the bench presses, the dumbbell bench presses, incline press, whatever. All of them go in the same category in this video. They target the exact same muscles pretty much, apart from the core, because you don't have to tighten your core when you're doing a bench press, for example, really. So they target all the same muscles apart from the core, and they do so just as well, I guess. They're also easy to adjust the weight on, so you can go up in like small increments. You can add 2.5 kilos, is that the lowest, like 5 pounds, and then incrementally increase your weight that way. So they're very easily to progressively overload, like the push-up is. And you can also very easily work your way up to, doing heavy benches, I suppose, That's the pressing exercise you can go the heaviest on, I suppose. So there's the, largest amount of available space for progressive overload. Although most obviously don't need this because they're not going to be world record bench pressers. The negatives of any gym press is probably the fact that you need a gym, so it's not actually that accessible. Like you do need a gym. You have to drive to a gym in order to train these exercises. And if you don't want to do that, you have to invest, how much money? Probably it's going to run you over $1,000 for like a proper set of different weight dumbbells, or like one of those adjustable dumbbells. Then you need a bench as well, or you need a barbell and a bunch of weight. So it's not very accessible if you think about it. You need a gym. There's also a higher injury risk. Whenever you see someone get injured on a pressing exercise, it's them doing a heavy bench press, like a heavy overhead press, something like that. And they don't work your core, at least not compared to a push-up where you are like in a constant plank position, right? None of the gym pressing exercises really engages your core like the push-up. And then lastly, you have the dip, which I include as like a separate category, because most people, when they talk about the king of pressing exercises, probably think of the dip. It's a bodyweight movement like the push-up, and it's arguably the harder of the two. And it also works your muscles in the, I suppose, fullest range of motion. Like you get a very deep stretch in your chest, your shoulders, and your triceps. And they also work your core, although not as much as the push-up. With the dip, you also don't need a lot of equipment. You need like parallel bars, or just somewhere you can lower yourself down. That could be a couple of chairs, although you probably want like proper equipment. So you don't need a gym to do this exercise. So it's definitely more available. Obviously, it's not as available as the push-up. It's also not beginner friendly at all. It's a very difficult exercise to work your way up to if you're not athletic off the bat, whereas the push-up is far easier. That's also not, I mean, yeah, you can do negative dips, I suppose, but nothing beats the push-up when it comes to accessibility for beginners, in my opinion. And then lastly, and the reason I personally don't do dips, and the reason a lot of people can't do dips, is because of shoulder positioning. Like dips can, I suppose, if you have skeletal asymmetries like me, place your shoulders in an awkward position. So one of my shoulders is a little further forward than the other, which is the case for a lot of people. Hence, dips are just awkward for me, especially when I load my entire body weight up in the dip position. It just doesn't work. I have tried dips before, and I had terrible shoulder pain for a long time afterwards. Hence, I don't really do them. I do push-ups. Yeah, and apart from the shoulders, they can also be straining on your wrists. That's also something I experienced. So my wrists began hurting. Yeah, so they're just a more difficult exercise compared to the push-up, in my opinion. But they are probably, if you're able to do them, the best pressing exercise out there, I suppose. But listen, the bottom line is that all of these exercises do the same thing. They all work the same muscles, and then in slightly different ways, and maybe one of them is slightly better than the other. But the bottom line is that you have to pick the one which works for you, and I suppose you figure that out by just trying all of them, and then figuring out, okay, which one do I like? I like the push-up the best, probably because that's just what I ended up doing. I also ended up working out at home because I didn't enjoy working out at the gym that much. So then I just ended up doing push-ups, and I built my entire chest. And I'm gonna hit a chest flex in the end of this video. All my chest I've built from doing push-ups. I haven't bench pressed for 4 years. I never really bench pressed consistently. All I ever done, like I did for my back. So for my back, I have only really done chin-ups. Pull-ups, chin-ups are the same thing in my opinion. And I've only really done push-ups for my front, so all my pressing muscles. So those two exercises have essentially built my entire upper body. And then apart from those two, I have done some isolation work, some shoulder work, some arm work, etc. But I credit most of my upper body development to those two exercises alone. And that's why I like the push-up the best. It wins in my opinion because of its convenience, its accessibility for wherever you can do it, wherever you are. It's very easy to do as a beginner. It's very easy to progress on. It works your core as well as the best core exercise out there, which in my opinion is a plank. And it's safe. It's very hard to get injured on the exercise, and injuries are the last thing you want, because then you can't work out at all. So then you might as well just throw everything out the window, you know. And they're lastly also just what I ended up doing, as I explained before. So I'm obviously biased in that way. But yeah, you have to pick the one that works for you in your situation. And there's not really a best exercise. Maybe there is, but I don't think it matters. I think it's nitpicking. And I think the most important bit here, the best exercise, in other words, is the one that you can do consistently for a long period of time, because that's what it takes to build muscle. And that's the bottom line.